my name's Petra. How are you going? I wanted to record a what I knit in 2022 video, and so here it is. Now, I certainly haven't knit as much as other podcasters have because, well, I just don't get as much time to knit maybe as everyone else does. I do work full-time and have a busy family as well, but that just means that we can keep it short and I can show you the various things that I did knit and within a reasonable time frame. So that's all fine. So the first thing that I knit is this top, which is a 1940s top. I've completely forgotten what the pattern was. It uses colour mark yarn, and the colourway didn't come like this. I actually overdyed it myself. And the way that I did that was I dyed it on the cone, and so it's darker at the bottom and then goes kind of spotty throughout. So that's what this one looks like. I really like the fit of this. I do like narrow fitting garments. And this one was just called Pullover Pattern 5328 by Jack Frost, and it was a free pattern that I found on the internet. Awesome. So yeah, I've been really happy with this one. I've got heaps of use out of it. It's one thing that I did notice with this one, it's knit at a fairly loose gauge, and it has got snagged a couple of times, so I've had to kind of fix that up because I had some kind of bits of yarn just get pulled out of it, and I was really upset because I was wearing it all the time, but using a crochet hook I managed to kind of weave it all back in again, and so that's been fine. So I was really happy with the yarn for this one. It's really soft, and the yarn is a fingering weight colour mark cashmere 8-36 NM fine fingering weight. In terms of the needles I used 2.75 millimeters for the ribbing and 3.5 for the main part of the body because I wanted it to be a summer garment, and I have definitely been wearing this over Australian summers, which has been great. Okay, I think I actually told a lie. I think this was the first one of 2023, not the previous garment, but I finished them both around the same time, which was in January. This one, I don't have a particular pattern that I knit from. It was just something I designed myself because I had this yarn in stash, and I hadn't been knitting for about 6 or 7 years for a long time, so I've got some fairly deep stash, and yeah, I wanted to get rid of it. So this one here is Manos de Uruguay Silk Fino, which is a silk wool hand-dyed yarn, and the brown is some unknown wool that was in my stash. I've got no idea what it was. The pattern is a slip stitch pattern that I found in Barbara Walker's. Sorry, I've got a kitten next to me. The pattern is a slip stitch pattern that I found in Barbara Walker's. I think it was the first knitting charts book that she does. Excuse the kitten noise. I can get my family out of the house, but I can't get the pets out of the house. And I used a 4mm needle, and I ran out of yarn. I knit it from the bottom up and then ran out of yarn right here, so I ended up having to add some creative detail and I knit my own shoulder pads and put them in this, so it does have padded shoulders. Yeah, basically I made this one up as I went along. The other thing that I did that was a little bit funny with this is I did add a button band, but I already had buttonholes, and I added the button band because I thought that it was actually too tight, but actually I've got heaps of room in this, so I didn't need the button band at all because I already had holes that I had knit into the garment. The buttons are off center because, well, no, the button, I guess the button band's off center. The buttons themselves are centered. But I think it ended up turning out as a nice design feature, so I was happy with it. And the back's completely different from the front because I had a different ball of yarn that was just a totally different colour. So on the back I've got cables. That's what that looks like. I've been getting compliments about it from my some of my friends, so that's nice. It has been well received, and it's nice and warm. Okay, the next two projects I'm going to show together, but well, this one first. This isn't the next project that I actually knit, but the other one is a shawl, and I thought I'll just get changed. This particular one was from a book called Retro Knits that I found, and my picture looks a little bit different from the sample picture because mine is not centered, and that's actually a fault of the pattern. I think they've resized it to modern sizes and didn't correctly, like it hadn't been tech edited, I think, because my pattern didn't end up centered whereas the picture was. But in the end, I'm still happy with the way it worked out. This particular project I knit with 2 strands of, hang on a minute, this particular project I knit with 2 strands of lace weight 2-ply 4-36 NM heavy lace weight soft wool from Colourmart and 1 ply of cobweb weight 65-35 cash silk, which was 2-65 NM cobweb weight, 65% cashmere, 35% silk. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful. And I got those on a cone from Colourmart, and it was dyed by me after the fact because the cashmere silk was white, the yarn was burgundy, and so I knit it up together and then over dyed it all burgundy, which has given it a heathered effect. So, I don't know if you can see, but it's got the detail across the sleeves as well. Alrighty, yeah, I did not like this pattern. I don't recommend the pattern. It didn't have the right stitch count. I had to change it on the fly, and in the end it fits me, but I wasn't happy with the pattern. Okay, the next project I finished this year is a very special project for me. I actually finished this the year before, but this project killed me, and it's the reason why I stopped knitting for 7 years, I think. Well, other than having children as well. But I was planning to wear this to my wedding, and I didn't consider it really finished until I'd had a chance to block it and check that it was okay. And so this is Gossamer weight. This is actually the reason why I had that fine cashmere silk cobweb weight in the first place. So I knit this for my wedding and got married in March. So yeah, it ended up being a finished project. It was absolutely beautiful on the day. And this one is a pattern by Marianne Kinzel from 1971. It's the modern book of, it's Marianne Kinzel's Modern Book of Lace, I think it was called. Let me just double check. It's called it's called Balmoral Rose. The Rose of England design by Marianne Kinzel. And it's actually a tablecloth. What was I looking up? I don't think I've got the actual name of the book on here. So yes, this particular yarn, I knit this with a 2mm needle, which is the equivalent of a US size 0. And by the time I finally bound it off, there were thousands of stitches on the outside. It was insane. And yes, it can actually be pulled through a wedding ring. It's really, really, really fun. And it's got beads on it as well. But the beads are pretty subtle. You can't really... Don't know if you can see any beads. Oh, there we go. They're just on the leaf, the final leaf there. Put some beads on there. But yes, that was a labour of love, and now I don't know what to do with it because I'm afraid to ever get it out in case it gets eaten by moths. We did actually have a bit of drama while I was knitting it as well. We had to have our house fumigated a couple of times because we had these horrible... Well, we had moths, but then we also had like carpet beetles or something. And I actually got the fumigator to spray this because I was so frightened. And he said you don't normally spray fabric, so I was worried that it was going to stain. But fortunately, it was completely fine, and it was an environmentally friendly spray as well, so it didn't damage the fabric at all. Okay, so as soon as I had finished blocking the shawl for my wedding, I got really excited and cast on a little garment for my daughter. It just looks absolutely tiny now. She's grown a lot even in 6 months. But basically I knit her a little bolero. There's no way I can try this on. So yeah, just a little lace bolero. It's using the leftover yarn from the cashmere, colour mark cashmere from the first project that I finished earlier in the year. And this didn't end up being the best, but I decided to embroider on the back of it, but it just didn't really come out because of the yarn being too spotty. So you couldn't really... And also the actual flower motif that I embroidered wasn't... Like, it was the first time I'd ever done embroidery and it didn't really look like anything in particular. But never mind. I think it would be better if I tried embroidery again, but on something very plain. And I was also a little bit disappointed because I used a pink pen when transferring the design onto the embroidery paper, and then when I washed off the embroidery paper it slightly stained the garment pink. So I know not to do that next time. I'll just use a pencil. Alright, well, she doesn't wear this, but she's held on to it, so obviously it's meaningful to her. It's lovely. This ended up for my daughter, but just because I knit it too small, but I wanted it for me. I ended up with this teeny tiny little hat. I didn't try it on at the time when I did it in my podcast, but yeah. Maybe it's suitable for a 1940s hat, because 1940s people always wear these like tiny little impractical hats. But yeah, it's a bit silly on me. It's just way too small. But I love the colours. It was a whole bunch of scraps from my scrap drawer, and I don't even know what this turquoise yarn is. It's a heather. It might be a Jamieson and Smith maybe, but I actually got it as a scrap. And the grey, black and white is a Rowan fine wool, which was a superwash merino, but you can't get it anymore, it's discontinued. So yeah, I'm a bit disappointed that it ended up too small. I might have to make another one with a larger needle size that might fit me, but that might be a bit too loose. So probably the pattern is just too small. I can't, yeah, I'd either have to use a larger wool entirely or just cast on more stitches, but then the center won't look the same. So, okay, now I forgot to say, but that burgundy coloured top that I was just wearing was a 1940s garment. whereas this one is a 1930s garment. And this one was from Table Talk publication, which I found in Trove, which is a Australian archive of old newspapers and magazines. And so this one was a knitting magazine insert in a newspaper, I believe. That's what I want to say. I can't exactly remember if that's the case. And it actually has quite a few really good patterns in there, and so I'm knitting another one at the moment. But yes, so this one, 1930s, uses intarsia for the different stripes, although I found that I got a neater finish if I actually seamed it instead. So I started out doing it with intarsia and then I used seaming, so I've got some of these stripes are intarsia and some are seamed. I used Bendigo Woolen Mills for the yarn with their luxury 4-ply, and I dyed the grey colour myself. I did actually run out of yarn partway through, so the top part of the garment and the sleeves are, probably the top of the sleeves are with I dyed it twice, and it took me a little while to get the colour match right, but I got there in the end, so I was really happy with that. I have worn this garment a lot. I really like it. Well, actually, I've worn all of my garments a lot because I am not super productive. It's not like I have 100 things that I'm making in a year, or even 20. If I'm making 10 things in a year, then they're all getting lots of use. But yes, this one got worn a lot. The only problem is, though, I realised I don't really like the Bendigo Woolen Mills yarn that much because it pills like crazy. So if you have a look, I don't even know if you can see it, but it's just really pilly. Yeah, I have actually done a shave of this with the electric shaver not that long ago, but it just looks super pilly already. I can see right down the bottom there, there's heaps of pilling on it. Probably can't really tell because of the fact that it's black, but in comparison, this one, which has probably got just as much wear, hasn't got any pilling on it at all. It's just, this yarn is just perfect. I think this is from a British breed sheep, whereas the Bendigo Woolen Mills is merino, and the merino is definitely a lot pillier. Now, in terms of what the pattern was actually called, it was called Combining Mesh, Stitch and Ribbing from Table Talk, and it was from 1933. Alright, so I knit this with a 2.75mm needle for the ribbing and 3.25 most likely for the mesh. I do find that I typically, unless I'm using a different weight of yarn, if I'm knitting 4-ply, I pretty much either use 3.25mm or 3.5, depending on the fabric that I want for the main part of the body, and I pretty much always use 2.75 for the ribbing. So those three sets of needles get used a lot. Alright, probably would have been better if I worn black under this one, but that's right, I was wearing brown underneath. So the next thing I knit was this bolero jacket, and it kind of sits differently depending on, like, I can actually kind of use a pin or something to pin it like this, and I've done that with dresses, or I can leave it loose, which makes it a lot more casual. And I've got a matching little bow that I ended up, which is on a pin, and I knit the bow because I thought that by itself it was a bit utilitarian, but as it turned out, I think I prefer it without the bow. I've been wearing it lately without the bow, and instead of being kind of putting a pin, just putting a pin here sometimes, or the bow turned out not to be necessary, but it's nice with the bow as well. And this particular project was, oh, I didn't write down the name of the original pattern. I did show it in a podcast episode. I actually use, this is actually sport weight yarn, which is unusual for me. And so I actually used a 3.75 millimeter needle, which is a US 5, instead of my usual 3.25. And so it came out as a 22 stitch per 10 centimeter gauge rather than my usual 28. And yeah, it's a real thick and thin yarn, and it was from yarnsfromitaly.com, and it came on a cone, and it's an acrylic wool blend. So even though it's got acrylic in it, I didn't mind knitting with it. It was fine. It is a bit crazy though, and I didn't think it was going to suit me, but as it turned out, I've been quite happy with it. I think that it's like the colours in it seem to suit me fine, so I've been happy with that one. Okay, there was one more thing that I knit in 2023, but it was a pair of socks, and I can't find them anywhere. And also I thought they were superwash wool, and it turned out they mustn't have been because they shrunk in the wash. So now they belong to my kids, and I searched through the kids' drawers and I couldn't find the socks, so who knows what happened to those. But this is the last thing other than the socks, and it is my 1940s t-shirt that I knit. I've had a few learning curves with this particular one. It was knit in the round, whereas normally I knit back and forth, and so the sleeves were actually added in the round as I went, and I had to figure out how I was going to do the sleeve caps because I've never done that before, and I just kind of made it up as I went along. I have since learned that probably what I should have done was a purl stitch and then a decrease on either side of the purl stitch. Instead, I just decreased as I went with a double decrease, and the double decrease pops a little bit more than I would have liked. So it's just a little bit messy at the decreases at the underarms. So next time I'm going to use the purl method. The other thing as well is this particular yarn had been attacked by moths several years ago, and so it broke quite a few times as I was knitting with it. So it means there's a few like puckered spots. I know which side I like to have as the back, because there's a couple of puckered spots in the back where I had to add new yarn on, and I just did it in the middle of a row. But this superwash merino, it's not really that forgiving for adding new yarn in the middle of the row because it looks very smooth, and then all of a sudden there's a gap. So yeah, a learning curve for that is certainly if I was using this kind of yarn again in the future and I had to add new balls of yarn in, I'd do it on the sides. But it was a really fun knit. It only took me 3 weeks, which is really fast for me. I normally take several months to knit a project. I just wanted to knit around the circle, and this did it for me. The yarn is the same yarn that I knit this hat from, with the exception of the heather, and it's basically a Rowan superwash merino, so fine merino 4-ply. And just like my other projects, this one's got heaps of use. It is summer at the moment, so I've been wearing this a lot over summer. It's been getting heaps of use. Alright, well that's it for all of my 2023 projects. I hope you liked them. I'm looking forward to knitting more garments in 2024. I've almost finished 2 garments, so they'll be my next podcast most likely. And yeah, I've been getting so much use out of all of these garments this year, so definitely looking to make more. I do feel like one thing that's a bit short in my wardrobe is long sleeve warm garments, so I do plan to make more of those. But also, I get so much wear out of these short sleeve garments. Even though it's a hot summer in Australia, I find that I'm always cold anyway. I'm just a cold-blooded kind of person. But also, whenever it's hot, we've got the air conditioner running. So personally, I get heaps of use out of wool t-shirts. I never, I guess, even realised it was a thing because no one else wears them. I probably get stared at when I go into the supermarket. But I really find it a practical item, especially merino wool. It's quite wicking, and so if you don't have a very dense stitch gauge, so with this one being 3.5 millimeter needles instead of 3.25, it's nice and airy. It's got a reasonable drape, and yeah, so I find that it's been actually perfect for summer. Ironically, throughout the summer I've been knitting on a winter project, that's pretty much finished, so that will be one of the ones that I'll be showing you next. And yes, but I'm casting on I've just recently cast on a vest, and I'm wondering if maybe that can be a summer project as well, so it'll be a sleeveless one. Alrighty, nice having a chance to catch up with you. Please tell me which of my garments is your favourite. Are there any that you really like, or are there any that you would consider knitting for yourself, or are there any, do you have any gaps in your wardrobe? Do you have summer? Do you actually even use wool for summer, or is everyone else just using linen and cotton for summer? Because one thing that I will note is, other than the fact that I have acrylic in that bolero, all of my garments are wool. That's just what I like to use. So yeah, please tell me. Let me know your thoughts. Have a great day. Bye.